Risks are classified into 4 levels in BGP Offshore: corporate risk, project risk, location risk, and task risk. In this video, we will talk about location risk. Locations in BGP Offshore are typically vessels. At this level, we focus on activities that are performed on the vessel, which will rarely change from project to project. Usually, we are required to comply with regulations or industry standards, such as the International Association of Oil and Gas Producers, IOGP, or the International Association of Geophysical Contractors, IAGC, or regulations associated with them. The effective identification of these hazards will ensure we control these risks. BGP Offshore has a documented procedure called BGPO MP014 Location Hazard Assessment. This procedure forms part of the risk management system that is used within BGP Offshore. The risk management system is based around the ISO 31000 requirements. By having a structured risk management system that is aligned to ISO 31000, we also meet the requirements identified in IOGP Report 510 Operating Management System Framework Element 5 Risk Assessment and Control. Let's now look at FLAG, which is BGP Offshore's software used to support the business management system and captures all relevant information associated with location hazard. From the Start page, click your location. Then click the Hazard Assessment tab. On each Location Homepage Hazard Assessment tab, you will see a Location Hazard Register, which is completed by Senior Line Management, and with the outcome of the assessment approved by the VP QHSSE. As stated previously, location risks can have a significant impact on the personnel working there, the operations being performed, and the reputation of the company. This procedure focuses on activities, which means the type of work required to be done, and not the task associated with these activities. Typical risks are related to the following: vessel maneuvering, vessel-to-vessel operations, workboat activities, and work-related activities to include, but not limited to, working at height, confined space entry, and high-pressure air. To record a new location hazard, click on New Hazard Assessment. Select from the options: Activity, Facility, Vessel. Select the category of the activity. For example, confined space entry, which is an area on board which has limited openings for entry and exit, inadequate ventilation, or is not designed for continuous worker occupancy. Describe here the type of hazards that could be faced while performing this activity. As many hazards as possible should be identified so that the correct mitigations can be applied. Here, we will describe the risk and what risks are known when performing this type of activity. In this phase, understanding how the risk could impact the locations or personnel performing tasks associated with the activity will help in other areas as well. BGP Offshore uses PEARF as a method of categorizing different types of hazards within the company. When attempting to identify risk and hazards, consider people, environment, assets, reputation, and financial. Once hazards and threats have been identified, their causes, consequences, and probability can be estimated, and the risk determined. Analyzing the various risks should be done using the BGP Offshore Risk Matrix. The risks should be analyzed by taking into consideration the likelihood of the risk occurring and the severity that it poses to the company. This should be recorded accordingly in the risk assessment. Severity. The severity rating shall be assessed by first taking into consideration the particular category that the hazard being assessed will have the greatest impact, should the risk be realized. This is divided into 5 categories, and these are people, environmental, assets, reputation, and finance. When the category is identified, there are 5 levels of severity in which a risk may fall, 1 being the lowest level of risk and 5 being the highest. Every category in PEARF has specific conditions associated with each of the 5 levels of risk. Likelihood. Determine the likelihood of an incident, injury, or harm arising from the task by using the risk matrix to rank the likelihood using the subcategories of A. Never heard of in the industry. B. Heard of in the industry. C. Incident has occurred in our company. D. Happens several times a year in our company. And E. Happens several times a year in our location. Risk rating. Once the severity and likelihood have been identified, the risk level can be determined from the risk matrix. As shown in the matrix, risk ratings can range from A1, lowest risk, to E5, highest risk. The purpose of risk evaluation is to assist in making decisions based on the outcomes of risk analysis about which risks need treatment and the priority for treatment implementation. Red, intolerable. The operation should not start or continue until an alternative method has been developed or additional controls have been implemented. Yellow, incorporate risk reduction measures. The operation should start or proceed only when risk-reducing measures are in operation or with specific sanction by management. Green, manage for continuous improvement. The operation may start or proceed with continuous effort to improve. Here, we shall describe who or what will be affected by the hazards. For example, confined space entry can result in a fatality due to asphyxiation. Key legal and other requirements. BGP Offshore is required to understand relevant requirements to undertake their operations, identifying legal requirements of countries the company is registered in, or, in the case of vessels, the maritime laws that govern the activity. When the term other is used here, it refers to industry best practices that have been adopted by members of IOGP or generally recognized leading standards. For example, the Lifting Operation and Lifting Equipment Regulations of 1998, LOLA, is a UK law, but is deemed a leading standard to follow and may be named as a requirement in contracts. Understand the other requirements allow for a more robust procedure and mitigations to be implemented. Required training. Having identified the legal and other requirements, they would be referenced to understand what level of competency is needed to be able to perform the activities safely. Information here is used when building the company training matrix. Each level of training required and what is involved in that training will be identified during this phase. Affected parties. Describe here the parties who are likely to be affected by the impact of the activity. Proposed mitigations. Here we can describe all the mitigations that shall be applied whenever this activity is performed. The following are examples of mitigations that could be used. Permit to work, work instructions, equipment and PPE, rescue plan, isolations, and risk assessments. Detailing here everything that shall be required provides location line management with clear guidance on what shall be in place when performing tasks associated with the activity. Procedure reference. State here the BGP Offshore management procedure that has been produced to provide guidance on this activity. This will provide personnel with a clear reference of BGP Offshore's requirements to be followed. When our subcontractor has a similar procedure, we will also record their procedure reference, and it will be indicated which procedure is going to be used in the bridging document. The bridging document shall define which procedure will be used when cooperating on this activity with the subcontractor. Permit to work required. If this activity is deemed to hold a significant risk when being performed, it will be indicated here that on this location it shall require a permit to work to be in place before the task associated with the activity can be performed. Residual risk rating. Using the same principles of risk rating, will here provide BGP Offshore with an overall understanding of the risk rating for the activity and the location's hazard register. It should be noted in this section that though it is difficult to reduce the severity outcome of the activity, we should be able to reduce the likelihood of the incident happening. Responsible job title. Here, we state the position at the location that has the overall accountability and responsibility to manage the activity identified. This will typically be the highest level of management at the location. Last review date. The last recorded review that was conducted on this activity shall be listed here. There will be a record of this review in Flag. Identifying the last review date will allow location line management to set a schedule for further reviews. This process will be the responsibility of the senior BGP offshore line manager for the location to implement. Once the location hazard assessment has been saved, you will see it on the location page under the Hazard Assessment tab. You will also see at the bottom of each individual location hazard assessment page a related task registers and 3 additional tabs. These are Related Tasks. This tab is for adding tasks that are associated with this activity. Work Items. This will allow you to see all the work items that have been generated for the location hazard management, and you will be able to add additional work items for other activities to support the implementation of the location hazard management. Attachments. This tab is for adding supporting documents that relate to this location hazard. We should make sure that we capture any information that is used to support the process. And Competent Positions. This tab is for recording personnel who have received training and are competent to perform the activity. All activities that have been listed for each location shall be reviewed by the line management team, which involves the following positions: Master, Chief Officer, Chief Engineer, Second Engineer, Party Chief, Assistant Party Chief, Department Chiefs, and QHSSE Advisor. The review should take into consideration any issues associated with the activity that have been reported since the last review. These can be incidents at the location, similar incidents from other BGP offshore locations, incidents within the industry, non-conformances raised during audits or active monitoring, or from improvements in industry best practice. The location line management shall review the hazard assessment annually per rotation, and this can be done in one session or divided up through the course of the year. Each rotation shall perform their own reviews and record the reviews in Flag, stating any updates that have been made, when the review occurred, and the personnel who were in attendance during the review. This session has now shown you how to enter a location hazard into Flag and explained what should be entered. Your QHSSE team can provide further guidance on this process, and you can also refer to BGPO MP014 Location Hazard Assessment. Remember, it is important that all aspects of the work to be done are considered, and that those involved in performing the tasks associated with this procedure are made aware of the location hazard assessment when first arriving at the location.